Friday. I had fun editing that audio you just heard. Had to find that, pay for it, and then take that other thing and dub it in and cut it down and try and make it fit. It's as short as I could make it. The thing was originally 4 minutes long without taking away any of the notes that flowed into each other. Anyways, I'm Scott Hensler on Tinfoil Hat Club. Julie Flores will be joining us here in a little bit. If those that were following us before, you know that we were from Scott Hensler Network, which the show I'm still doing on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and of course this show Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays. And we're just splitting it up. I'm taking more of the biblical aspect on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and the Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays is kind of an anything that has to do with what's going on out there, because there are things that even though as professing Christians or those who are followers of Jesus Christ, there's so much going on out there that the church won't address. And so we have to address it. And by the other means, then there's issues with those that are religious, those who are brainwashed, those who have bought into the matrix system, and so we've decided to leave that system and try and deal with those things that we all deal with. We're all in the same boat, no matter no matter what your belief is. Even if you don't believe it, it doesn't mean it doesn't exist. And so everything that we're talking about are those things that Julie and I come, in contact with. We talk to a lot of people. I can spend, all day on the phone. I've got people who walk in for deliverance. Those who may not know what a deliverance is. It's an exorcism. Julie does exorcisms. And through this interrogation of demons, of the demonic, we have learned a lot to the characteristics of demons and the true nature of today's evil. Today's evil wishes to steal, kill, and destroy everybody. See, demons, when they get their wish, people die. When demons act out their ugly nature, people become sick. People become mentally ill. People get, different diseases and cancers and all kinds of things that are just horrible, that man was never intended to have, but because of those things in place, because of evil and sin and so forth, this is what we have. But there's a whole other prospect out there that has to do with the occult that people were involved with that may not know that it is evil as bad as it is because of those lies that came from Satan. Now, when everyone talks about Satan, I want to remind everyone that the general church is leaving out demons. They're leaving out unclean spirits, familiar spirits, deceiving spirits, spirits of infirmity. They're leaving out the other whole side of everything because Satan himself is an individual that is not capable of being omnipresent. And so he has an army of fallen angels. He has an army of demons. And I'm sure that since they are evil and that there is no honor amongst thieves, that whole world is chaos. And I know that the angels of the Lord are constantly putting them back in the box. Because one thing about evil is it has to stay within a realm. It has to stay within a dimension. It has to stay within a law. And like any ill-behaved child, they'll test the waters. They'll test the boundaries. And so once in a while, you'll see a disaster take place. You'll see something happen that had no rhyme or reason. And then all of a sudden a miracle comes in and things are right again. Well, what's happened there is demons have crossed the line. And what God's angels have done is they've come in and they've recorrected it. So you'll see terrible atrocities, you'll see things take place, and then all of a sudden there's a miracle that comes out of it. And it's been my experience that that's what's happening. Now, unfortunately, that doesn't happen all the time. When we see disasters, then there's loss of life. When we see things that take place that go beyond the comprehension of man, those things are supernatural, paranormal, and there's loss of life, there's disasters, doesn't always mean that there's something divine that comes out of it. But what we do know is God is in control. And so us as those who follow Christ, then we're going to be obedient. And I'm just going to leave it at that because there's a whole gamut of things we're going to talk about tonight. And so let me go through a list here. The archives for the old show I placed on a website called Gimbaling, and I've talked about that before. Everything can be accessed from scotthensler.org on the homepage. And also the whole series that I did on the radio station KFNX in Phoenix is on YouTube. I've got playlists, I've got teaching, I've got some of the old shows on there. And so if you were to look at YouTube for Scott Hensler Network, you could find that connection, or again, come off of scotthensler.org. So, all right. The other is I do plan on continuing with the shortwave. Right now, I'm just swamped. I have made an arrangement with a company that we're going to be using. It's basically the same one that Rick Wiles is using, and so it's a pretty good deal. It works for me, and that's what we're going to do. But it's not going to be for another 30 days or so. So we'll be looking forward to that, because Julie will have a chance to talk to the people down in South America and Cuba, Central, and Mexico City, and even talk a little bit in her language to them. And so, this is what we're doing. We're trying to reach those that would normally not hear this information, even though the Christian church in itself is completely blind, completely brainwashed. In fact, I'm absolutely appalled at what I've been dealing with here recently. Again, it reminds me, and I'm sorry, but there's a massive ignorance, and the itchy ears, those things that you love the lie. Well, unfortunately, that has taken hold. Now, last night I did quite a bit of a teaching on that. Went a little over an hour. And the whole thing is about mind control, about those things of lies, using them, brainwashing, demon possession, those things of demonization, defining the difference between the two. And there's curses that are upon families. And so you can have somebody who's actually born into the curse because of the sins of the father. And in that, there's really, they're lost. Now, we know that with the curse of the bastard in Deuteronomy 23. So these things are real. Things can go on to the third and fourth and even on to the 10th generation. And so you can have a family that's cursed. And we see this all the time. We see drug abuse. We see even murder that runs in families. We see violence. We see alcoholism. We see, infidelity. You name it. It runs, and then the family's destroyed from it. Well, it's a curse, period. And I've taught about how that mechanically works with the demons, because the demons are the worker bees behind the curse that actually carry it out. Now, when I first went in, became a Christian, if I had known now what I know then what I know now, then what I would have done is not entered into the church. I would have just sat and read my Bible and then maybe tried to connect with a few people, because the things that take place within that four walls is a massive plan of deception to keep you from being the men and women of God that God intended you to be, period. And so what that means is that basically, let's just use the United States as a foundation, as an example, that the power of God is not flowing in these churches. Most of the people, 99.9, have absolutely no idea about the occult, know nothing about witchcraft, know nothing about any of the paranormal. They're incapable of comprehending, dealing, and working, in these situations. And in reality, this is how the world works. So it's kind of like taking a child and teaching them, let's say instead of English, you're taking all the phonics and all the vowels and everything, and you're mixing everything up. And when the child speaks, they have nothing intelligible is coming out of them, and then turn them loose into society and see how they function. And just like a lot of Mormons, that when they found out, including Catholics and even Jehovah's Witness, like Julie was in, that when they find out that they were lied to, when they find out that they were used, when they find out that everything was in place basically for them to fail. I remember going on a job one time, and the two owners, they didn't get along with each other. And when I went out to the job, what I was told to bring with me sent me to a journey to fail. And the other boss knew that. He said, "Well, I knew you were being sent to fail," and that kind of stuck with me. I was being sent to fail. So the venture of what we call the church today is eventually to fail, and they are failing. And so we're in these times that are just absolutely heartbreaking, because no good is going to come of it. All right, Julie, I'm going to remember you had a different number today, so I'm just going to bring you in, and let's just go back and forth for Friday, open mic, and I know you've got some things, so go ahead.
Well, I do have some things. I guess I'll do more on the pineal gland later. I want people to know how that is going to tie in with the mark of the beast, but I also have, I sent you some of the stuff I got today. Remember, I'm telling you, I about fell off my chair. And still there's zero protesting. When people that if you're in the New Age or in any, I don't care what it is, whatever system of belief you have, which I'm Native American and Hispanic, so I grew up in the Native American, type tradition. I mean, I learned that from one side of my family, and then Jehovah's Witness from the other side. And I will say that, you kind of have more of a New Age outlook to some degree, if you had to liken it, to something. But, if you're in that genre, I will tell you that when I found out that these beings that I was speaking with and these beings that I was socializing with, and I was a psychic and a very powerful one on the West Coast, worked with the marshal's office and the sheriff's department and what have you. And when I found out who they really were, it was quite a letdown. And I began to realize and do a study on where these things come from, how they got here, how they came to be, who they are. And it was really shocking to learn that these really, really don't like you. They hate you. They can't stand you. They want to be you because they have no hope. And I know that a lot of you who maybe listen to this who have spoken with beings that are otherworldly, you might say, I know that they can tell you that they're from some planetary system. I mean, I named off several that say they're from the Booth constellation and the, Zeta Reticuli and all what have you. But the thing is that if you test them, you will see that there's a problem. And that's kind of what happened to me, and why I started looking for the truth, because, just like John B. said, John B. was he was the head military general for prior Queen of England, and he was also like the go-to guy for everything, and he would do these seances and all this spirit realm stuff and call in these beings, to get knowledge, and he was seen as someone talking to angels, and that was the official word of the palace. And I noticed on Ancient Aliens, the series, they talk about him and they point him out, and they say they read some of his writings. But you know what they didn't do? And I found this very duplicitous. I found it extremely duplicitous. They're going to tell a story, you need to tell both sides. Okay, Mufon does the same thing. In his personal diary that was published later, he actually said, these things, I don't think these things are angels. And then he would write along and talk about them and say, later on he said, these things are lying to me, and they're getting more and more evil the more I talk to them. These aren't angels. These are demons. Now, This is John D. D-E-E. Go look him up, okay? His counterpart actually threw himself out of a castle window and fell to his death, caused by these beings, no doubt. But I know some of you believe in the generation of the light tunnel, and if you have 51% or more sacred light, you go up. I know that it's a common held belief, but I do want you to know that it is wrong. It is absolutely wrong. I had to find out for myself, and I asked you to do the same thing. Because Scott, when people say, oh, the occult doesn't exist, oh, demons don't exist, oh, whatever, you have those people. But I'm going to pose a question. If the occult doesn't exist, and it's not real, these demons and fallen angels aren't real, may I ask you, if Satanism isn't real, why your leaders of every nation, why do they do rituals? And you say, where, what rituals? Okay, did you see Sweden when they just did the christening of their new bridge, their new tunnel? Did you see that? The whole thing was to Baphomet. Did you see the goat person running around? All ritual occult to Baphomet. Why do your leaders do this all over the country, all over the world, if they don't believe in otherworldly beings? Why do they do that? And Scott, I've always found that odd that people will, just say, oh, they're not real. But you know what? The bottom line is that all the world leaders practice occultism. All you have to do is look at news stories. Start looking at news stories. Look at the time people are killed, how old they are when they die. They're 21, 2 plus 1 is 3. They die at 3:30 p.m. on Highway 101. And then go check out the dad. He's 21. The dad was a Mason. He was getting promoted in the occult, Masonry, Luciferian world, and he gave up the sacrifice. That's what it is. 101 is the Jews' Gate 101. That's the 2 pillars with the 0 in the middle is the birth of the false Messiah into the other world, the other realm, coming through this realm. That's what it is. 33, 666, 66. And let me give you another one. Coming up is 7, 16, 16. Now you watch. They've already planned a bunch of stuff for this. The Pope and all these Illuminati Flash and Pyramid Hill songs. They're supposed to be a Christian band. Not. These people are just as satanic as Ozzy Osbourne is, okay? And they're flashing all these symbols and the goat head and, whatever. And look, 7, 16, 16 is 777. So look up the cult of Aleister Crowley, the 777 cult. It is 7 plus 1 plus 6 is 7 plus 1 plus 6 plus 6 is 7. That's what that day represents. And you're going to see a lot of occult activity that night before and that day. So, Scott, it's all in front of our face. I mean, it's everywhere with the Satanism and the 5-point ceremonies in California that they did. These Satanists go to the 5 points and it's everywhere. And people are still sometimes in denial that this stuff is real, But if it's not real, then why do they do it? Why are they doing it? So, and I come from that world, the occult world. I come from that. And I can tell you that it's not only real, but it's more real than you are. And that realm is as close as the air between your fingertips. It's right there. And they are literally staring you in the face. And you can believe they're good guys, but I got news for you. They're not. Scott, you know that. You have, I'm sure you could tell, stories about these things and their evil nature. You've been down that road.
Yeah, well, unfortunately, and it never stops. One of the things, if you're trying to lie and deceive people, you go after the ones that are most likely going to bite. The old saying that there's a sucker born every minute. And so just like a Jezebel will come into, it doesn't matter if it's a church, it can be a corporation, because I've seen Jezebels in corporations. And they'll come in and they'll sow distension. They'll segregate people. They'll isolate this group of people and then turn them against another group of people that person is isolated. And so it's this massive web game that it can only be orchestrated by evil. Only the spirit demonic realm is capable of pulling it off. And so when you look at the United States government, when you look at different things that are incorporated, that because the government, this whole United States in 1871, we lost everything. I don't know whether you know that or not. And the District of Columbia came in, but then you have a house that's divided. Now you have compartmentalization. This is how factions of the FBI can behave the way they do and have others not know it. Same thing with the CIA. Same thing with Congress. Same thing with basically anything. And when they come in and do this, I've talked about this before. The eventual outcome is referred to as the Peter Principle. Now, if you're not familiar with it, when you let's say that you take you'll hire an individual, and because of their education, the only thing you hire them for is to sweep the floor. Well, it turns out they do such a great job of sweeping the floor, you make them head floor sweeper. And so they do a good job of managing the other floor sweepers that you decide to bring them into sales, give them a chance. And so you bring them into sales, and here it turns out they can sell things. And then you quickly move them up to head salesman. And then they do such a great job there that you think, well, why don't we bring them into the management position? And you bring them into the management position and they suck at it and you fire them. So you have this staircase that's going upward, 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 and because of one particular thing that fails, you throw everything away. And that's what the United States is doing, but that's what evil is doing. Evil takes everything and gets people to a mindset that they're moving forward, they think they're moving forward. And just like our Constitution, I'm trying to put this out here, that then when they see by false flags, which are evil, by those things that take place intentionally to look as if the government needs to be the one to protect us, to take away everything, then we do the Peter Principle. We throw everything else away, like the Constitution, and hand everything over to a tyrant government. Now, if as the saying goes, that if you have freedom, you have a government that fears the people. If you have tyranny, you have people who fear the government. And what I'm seeing is that the church, or those who say they are, fear demons, fear the supernatural, fear the demonic, and generally the population does anyways. But there are those who understand it that know, just like anyone, if they see a spider, that's one of the things about fear or arachnophobia, that in the mind you can't comprehend the spider, you don't understand it, and so it brings fear. And so they react the way they do. Now, when it comes to phobias, there's actually a demonic issue that takes place, and if you get that specific demon out of the person's noggin, that phobia goes away. But I'm just making a case. And so the evil that we have seen, that Julie and I have dealt with, that we're dealing with right now, there's a massive web that is being orchestrated by a group of individuals that, just as Julie mentioned, that it parallels a witch's coven, but these are actually acting people within a church. So then when we look at the facts, then are they a witch coven? And so if you take a little checklist, just like if you were to take the DSM-4 or the DSM-5 and analyze someone's psychological profile, then you would conclude that through the checklist that meet the criteria at a certain percentage that, yes, this individual has a, quote, a personality disorder. They're a narcissist. They're, somebody. And so when we do the checklist, even with society, evil has already taken hold. People are in that hive mentality, again, the theme of the show. And in this hive mentality is a spirit realm through its structure and its web of deception, through familiar spirits then people then go a direction that is self-destructive. So that's a Peter principle. And so evil is always in the detail. And demons do what demons do, and they're very good at it. They've known us for a very long time. Since they're in that spirit realm, and some have access to the physical because of sin, then they are able to perpetrate their nature. And so most people haven't a clue what's going on. And it's that in that ignorance that people perish. So, I don't know. I hope that makes sense to you, because that's pretty much what I'm seeing here, and being reaffirmed again that by not teaching those who follow, supposedly the Bible, don't know anything, and it's frightening. It literally is frightening. And Julie, we've used the examples before when you were in the military, that for you to go out into combat or into some kind of reconnaissance or whatever, recovery, and you have people with you that aren't trained, people with you that in the drop of a hat would throw their weapon down and run, people, that's when you lose your life, because you can't depend. And just like your husband in law enforcement, when I was in law enforcement, I had a partner who literally said to me, I partner with you because you see things. When we walk around a corner, you already know there's something there. And whatever that was, because that was before I was a Christian. But the point of it is that when you know you can rely on somebody that will be there, that will have your back, that's the way the Christian community should have been. But that's not the case. There's going to be anarchy. There's going to be brown shirt activity, which I talked about last night, pointing the fingers and throwing people under the bus. And that is a group of people who are going to take the mark of the beast. So, Julie, I don't know if you were going to get into that. You mentioned about saving that, but I'm sure there's a lot of people who actually be willing to listen to that information. Go ahead.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of people don't understand the function of the pineal gland. And if you go back all throughout history, I've explained in the last two shows where all that started and how that works. And you can see the pine cone representation all throughout archaeology and history. Just go back and do your research. And you'll see it on every hieroglyphic, Egyptian, Phoenician, Sumerian, name it, it's there. And why is that such a big deal? And why is it still a big deal? Why would they feed you poison, which fluoridated water, fluoride, is actually listed by the EPA as a hazardous poison? Hitler supposedly fed this to the people to completely make them just like they don't care. And that's why you don't care. That's why most of you don't care. You don't care because you've been fed all this poison, fluoride for one, in your toothpaste. I mean, in 1955, I think that Crest was the first company to start putting it in their toothpaste. But the bottom line is that this pineal gland does way more than what people have actually given it credit for. And I've talked about the recoding of the mRNA and the INC RNA, and this was at one point considered junk code by scientists, so they couldn't figure out what it did. Well, when they figured out what it did, they figured out it wasn't junk code. And this pineal gland can actually be responsible for recoding, blocking, and completely recoding your DNA. And and also, they have technology now where they can actually make you think that you are hearing voices. Now, an exorcist like myself would pray over that person, and if everything, the conditions were right and they met the requirements for exorcism, because everyone has to meet requirements for that to be done, you can't get rid of anything somebody doesn't want to get rid of. And there's absolutely nothing, time after time of trying to help these people, nothing changes, or very little, and they are really working at it, then we have to look at the direction of technology. And we do know they have technology now that can take over that area of your brain and make you think you hear voices, and it's called the Hive mind. They can literally control that portion of your brain, the hippocampus, which we talked about before, and the pineal gland, and they are using these to change the mindset, to be able to come in with that kind of technology, and they've done all of this over time in the media, everywhere else that they have planted their little poison arrows to begin to get you to think a certain way. They've pointed you down the yellow brick road so that you'll think and believe and feel a certain way. People are very programmed. You could ask someone today, I would invite you, have you studied ancient texts? And they would say, well, what is that? Well, Sumerian text, Hindu text, ancient Asian text, the text of Genghis Khan, all of these writings, the Epic of Gilgamesh, Babylonian text, the biblical text, other books like the Book of Enoch, Jasher, Jubilees, any of these books, the writings of Abraham, and ask them, have you studied any of these texts? And they would say no, because nobody does. And then you would say, did you know that according to every account, including the Thierry Reese, the man Thierry Reese, who lived 1,000 years ago, did you know that every account out there in the world that you can find gives you a flat Earth model as the map, and that's what our Earth is actually looks like? And they would say, you're so crazy, you're so crazy. But isn't it wild that the FAA and how are they called in English? The people that fly is the FAA, and then how do you say that in English? Where they monitor earthquakes, the geological people, USGS.
Yeah.
Something like that. Yeah, and they're the ones that these people are still using the Thierry Reese map. The guy's name was Thierry Reese, and he was, I want to say, of Indian descent or something, but they're still using that map. The FAA is using it, and the USGS is still using it.
Yeah, and the geological surveys.
Yeah, there. So I wonder why these people are still using the same maps that by this man that was mapped out the Earth 1,000 years ago, and they're using that map for all airline flights and everything. And so somebody would say, that's crazy, that's not possible. See, that tells me right there that you're brainwashed. You are brainwashed because you've never bothered to look around and read things. You're just taking what you hear and you're planting it in your mind, and you're happy with that. But there are people who are truth seekers who are not happy with the implantation of lies. And so when you know about the occult and you look at those types of situations, you start looking for markers. And by the way, I'm an occult forensic expert. That's my job. It's to look for occult markers in crime, in any crimes that are committed, okay? So that's what I do, and I look for these calling cards at scenes of crime. Anything that I pick up, a news article, anything I see, I look for little calling cards, okay? So when I looked into this globe Earth, I found a lot of satanic occult calling cards. I got that the Earth is 66,600 miles an hour around the sun. That's 666. It's 66.6 degrees off the horizontal. 666. You see, and this just keeps going on. All of their math continues to come out the same. And I started looking into it because I saw the same markers, the same little calling cards. And so my job is to try to teach you, all of you, to think outside the box. Step outside the matrix and ask yourself, why would they lie about that? Don't ask me. Why don't you ask yourself? I know you're smart enough to sit back and go, now, why would that be? we really did live on a flat Earth with a dome over it, like all the ancient writings say, that there's some kind of a dome. See, that's really showing there was a hand at work in creating a dome over the Earth. Some people are going to say, well, the aliens did it. But do you know where they're really from? Do you really believe their stories? And if you do, I would ask you to test them. Just test them. You could test them by biblical text, and they will fail. They will fail the test because they did it. They failed the test with me. They failed it. Said they were one thing. Come to find out, if the name of Jesus was spoken, they ran like their butts were on fire. So I went, oh, something's wrong with this picture. If you're so multi-talented and you're a genius and you guys are like, otherworldly aliens, why do you disappear and run whenever that name is used? What's the deal with that thing? You see, I'm not telling you have to be any religion. I hate religion, all religion. I can't stand it. Okay, it's all lies. It's every bit of it. So religion is part of the occult. It's part of it. I would ask you to look at Babylonian temples. I would ask you to look at mosques with the Muslims. I would ask you to look at synagogues. They all have spires on them or steeples. Go look at the churches. All representations of the phallic symbol of Osiris. The churches are no different than the mosques or any other thing. They're all in the occult. They just don't know it. My point is if somebody tells you these things and you're willing to walk away and not even listen because your mind is so closed to anything that could be, then you're in a perfect situation to be deceived forever about everything. So I just ask you to look into the things that you hear from us. Look into it. Go check it out. Hey, be my guest. I would check it out because I know that you're going to come back and say, wow, Jules, I have a point there. So, and I know, Scott, that's exactly what you want them to do as well. Go check it out, right?
Well, basically, it's like everyone's got a lobotomy. And in fact, if you remember how hideous that was in the 50s and 60s, and I'm sure that it still goes on, they're also talking about doing electronic or electrical shock therapy to do lobotomies. And, if you're not familiar with what it was, basically the doctor was taking an ice pick and going up behind the eye and driving it into the frontal lobe and then moving it around and causing brain damage. One of the Kennedys, I can't remember her name, they did that to her because she was kind of she wasn't one to go along with the plan and was revealing a lot of the secrets of the family, so they committed her and they gave her a lobotomy. Whenever you alter and change the mind, you've changed the original structure or plan of the mind. And then once you've, destroyed something, then supposedly you can rebuild it. This is how, the Masonics look at this, how the Illuminati looks at it, order out of chaos. To think that, here's another thing. Here's what I'm also finding, and I believe this is part of the brainwashing and the hive mind or hive mentality, and that everyone thinks that there's time. We have time when there's no way we could have a lot of time. How much time, I have no idea, and no one's ever considering the interim of that time, meaning that from the point of where everything comes to where they come and gather us all up and take us to FEMA camps, what happens in that time till it's completely done? What happens once we're in the camps? So anyone who thinks that everything we talk about is a conspiracy theory, that was another psyop to cause the rumor that anyone that thought about conspiracies, they themselves needed a lobotomy. They themselves had a mental disorder or problem when it was a psyop. It was a counteraction, a counterinsurgence of the truth. And so if you think that we have time, like it's 20, 30, 40, 50 years out there, then you've bought into the lie. If you don't think that it's possible that the government or those people could do such things, you've bought into the lie. And so the question is, do you have brain damage? is your pineal gland, basically, full of toxins? Well, probably all the above. I mean, we're subject to so much chemical, the vaccines, those things in the foods, the chemtrail spraying. How could we not have something? And so being, not having a true righteous anger towards the actions that have been taking place towards us, these are crimes against humanity. And in those crimes, people are suffering. But here's the thing. One of the things about keeping people in captivity is for them to like their captivity. This is one of the things that Rome was famous for, giving them the fights, giving them, entertainment, having them become brown shirts, where in a lower structure, there was something formed within the people that there was a pecking order. And so the people at the bottom of it basically would go along with the plan. So when you take, let's say you have several balls and there's some small, some large, and you put them in a bucket, and you shake the bucket with a certain frequency, those balls will arrange in a certain order because of the harmonics. And so the smaller ones may go to the bottom, and the larger ones may go to the top, and at a different frequency, it may totally reverse. And so through those brainwashing, through Phycotronics, through the other advancements and Psyops of altering and changing, otherwise engineering a society, they can alter and change it. It doesn't happen overnight. But this has been going on a very, very long time. And to not be stable in the comprehension of what's going on, meaning you're willing to accept anything. Your yes can be my no. Your right can be my wrong, and we're okay with that. Well, that's incorrect. That's absolutely absurd, because there's only one truth. And when you remove truth, and you bring in other means, then you don't have truth. One of the things about being a troubleshooter in electronics was to eliminate the variables. And that means to just take a quick assess of the situation, and we can say, well, we know that it's not this because this part of the circuit or part of the wiring or part of the mechanicals is working. So we have to look over here. And what they've done with society is the inability to troubleshoot society. So with everything, Julie, you sent me some things about Canada legalizing bestiality, sex with animals. Well, where's the animal rights activists in all this? I mean, this is insane, and we know what's going to happen with this. Children are next, and so they're building things up intentionally and dumbing us down to where we accept anything. Now, those who would never go along with it are the ones they have to eliminate, or they're the ones that have to put in bondage or quiet them up through laws. Laws, hate speech, right? So as soon as you step up and say, hey, this is wrong, you're considered a bigot. Again, this is a psyop. This whole thing shows that the order of things is no longer in order. Though they haven't been in a long time, it's been a slow kill, a soft kill, a slow suicide. I don't know if you've ever heard of that before, but through people's behaviors, though they know in their actions what they're doing will eventually cause their demise, they continue to do it. And by the way, some of the toxins and some of the poisons out there, you can actually become addicted to it. So you can actually like your poison. Alcohol would be one of the examples. But those food additives, those things put in liquids, those things put in solids of food can be addictive. And we know this with fast food burgers and things like that, the way they do the French fries. The MSG, I don't know if anyone's really familiar with that. That came from the Japanese because the rations that they were giving the Japanese troops, basically, they were chewing it on an old shoe. And so what they did is they formulated a chemical that would fool the brain through the tongue to give the brain the thought that the food tastes good. But at the same time, that can cause an anaphylactic shock. That can cause rapid heart rate. That can cause the mind to go into a stupor. And believe me, I know all about that. I stay away from MSG like I stay away from a rattlesnake. And unfortunately, it's just in about everything. So, anyways, Julie, go ahead.
This is true, and what they've done is they have made it possible to not only give you poison, but you're paying for it. You're buying it. And so now they're turning a profit off of your health and being able, and then the doctors and the pharmaceutical companies, of course, are going to get a lot of business, so then they're benefiting. I mean, I don't know, I don't really care what faith you believe in. I don't think that you could disagree that everything is completely upside down at this point. Big pharma, we have the technology and the wherewithal. There are cures for cancer, cures for there is no disease that they don't have a cure for. See, that's the point. They make these diseases. David, I think it's Rothschild is the one that owns the Zika virus. He owns it. It was created at his laboratory, and he owns it. The patent on it. Now, why would you create a virus and own the patent? What is the point of that? So you can use it to kill people. That's why. And you see he's doing a good job of what he's doing, the fear-mongering across this country and other nations. It's another attack around the corner, another bad guy. This time it was Al-Qaeda. Now it's ISIS. Anybody see the correlation between ISIS, the goddess, Egyptian goddess, and ISIS now? You might want to check into that because there's a very huge connection there. But the point is that this has been going on for, centuries. And this has actually been going on for thousands of years. If you think about it, every empire has fallen. If you go back and read your history, every empire has fallen in the very same way that America is going down. Exactly the same way. They introduce depravity into the nation and say it's good. They don't believe it. They don't believe it's. I mean, they're not. They're depraved. They're all depraved, but they're not saying that they want you. They want you to believe it because they want to further an agenda. It's not because this is their commitment to transgender and they love them and we should love them. You're on the chopping block. Transgender, homosexual, I don't care who you are. New Age, occult, witch, I don't care what you are. You're on the chopping block. Okay, they're just using you to further an agenda of power and control. That's what they're doing. So when you start looking at these products that they're putting in your food, they're putting in your water, the chemtrails to keep you from knowing what's going on up there, yeah, there's stuff going on up there. And they're all sitting up there watching, ready to do what they're going to do. And believe me, folks, these are not aliens from another galaxy. Okay, most of the time when you see unidentified flying objects, you think they're alien craft. They're not. Okay, they're not. They're military. All these things have been made by our own military. Yes, with the help of those beings, but they're military. They're all military. They all go back to military bases. Area 51, Nellis Air Force Base, name them. That's where they're going. And the unfortunate thing is people actually believe that these beings are aliens from other planets. I'm telling you, I used to think so too. They're not. You need to do your homework. They're not. These beings have been here all along, and they've been here intermingling with humanity, trying to interject themselves, plug themselves into the human DNA. They've been doing it all along. Please go look at the Egyptians. Look at King Narmer. Look at King Tut. Look at his father. The elongated skulls. They were not normal. Okay, these people were not normal. They have plugged themselves in all various times of humanity, trying to fit into our culture. And you know, these demonic beings, you notice when you talk to him, it was Dr. Jacques Vallée, who was not a believer in any God or anything like that, who said these beings actually change to fit any given culture. They behave not like extraterrestrials would, but like interdimensional creatures are known in history as demons. Jacques Vallée, go read it for yourself. Arthur C. Clarke, same thing. Pierre Guérin, go read his statements about him. He said the same thing, and he wasn't a believer in any God either. These are people who study this phenomenon and have come out with all of the, and Dr. Jacques Vallée he's very famous, so I'm sure you could find by him or Pierre Guérin the writings and the books that they've done. Because you know, Scott, these men were talking about these beings and how every case that they studied, it did not behave like an extraterrestrial case. It was an interdimensional, demonic presentation rather than that of what an extraterrestrial would be. So I would ask people, why are they trying to interject themselves into humanity? And if you just so happen to read up on the CET4 research website, you will see that people in their testimonies, every single time that someone would go after these beings and scream the name of Jesus at them and say, in the name of Jesus, you put me down. Well, all of a sudden, they vanished that fast. Now, if these are really beings that they say they are, they would actually not do that. So that was one of the first things that got my attention, Scott, when I wasn't a believer in Jesus Christ. That got my attention. Because if somebody says that name and these things run, there's a problem here. Because I found in all these ancient texts that very name mentioned has done that in many other ancient texts, not just the biblical texts, but there was power in this name that would be utilized to make these beings disappear. And it's not just cataloged in a biblical text. There are other texts that do catalog these events. So, you know, Scott, I know that you definitely understand the technology. These guys what they're doing is they're riding the magnetic wheels of the earth. And I'm going to tell you guys, I read about the magnetics of the earth. These are magnetic, I would say wheels. They're wheels within wheels of magnetic bands bands around the earth over the dome. And I actually read a very interesting way of describing that, and it was some writings called the Writings of Abraham. And it's not biblical text or anything like that, but I did read that, and the way he described it was these magnetic bands, wheels, and they were described as wheels, and they literally can ride the electromagnetic wheels in the air, and that is the same technology that Tesla had in fact tapped into, and of course he was taken out. He didn't die; they killed him, and they took his technology because they don't want us to have free energy. They don't want anybody to have free anything. So I would actually appreciate it, Scott, if you would talk a little bit about electromagnetic technology, because it really is a very real thing and very instrumental in what both sides are going to do in the end.
Well, when we talk about magnetism, there's different types. You can have what's natural, those things of iron, those things just like we have up in New York, and where it's a magnetic north, so it's a mass of iron content that is magnetized. but you can also have electromagnetics, EMF. But to ride something would indicate that there are what's referred to as flux lines. So whenever you have magnetism, whether it's induced naturally or electrically, there's a pole that is produced, a field, an electromagnetic field, and those lines are measured in flux. And then that flux can be much like threads that are sewn into fabric. And so my take would be to actually get on one of those threads and ride the thread. That would be how I would look at that. Now, if it's electrically done, that would take a tremendous amount of energy, but that was where Tesla came in. Now, Tesla, though he was brilliant, there's no way that he came up with everything on his own. There had to be a demonic influence. There had to be some type of information transferred to him, which I would refer to as fallen angel technology. And with his intellect, he was the key candidate for doing that, because not just anybody could take the information they gave him and be able to do something. His patents, his research on the oscillator, on the electric motor, again with electromagnetism, those things that basically are able to propel something. So then we have devices that can hover through the air, again maybe possibly riding the threads of the flux lines. So when it comes to Tesla, in his thinking, that I believe he somewhat was a humanitarian, because he wanted to give energy to people. And by the way, we're capable of using all of this energy, but it's been taken away from us. The Rockefellers, the Rothschilds, these guys have contained all that. It's one of the reasons why they went into his apartment where Tesla died, and they just literally ransacked it and took all of his notes and everything else. So they stole everything that he has. So there's a lot of stuff that he was working on that none of us, had any ability to see it, and never will. So with that in mind, then with this type of energy manipulation or control, then just like CERN, where it's a porthole, where they're doing the wormhole, where they're doing those things which are basically controlled nuclear detonation, then at a very fine point, they're able to manipulate the molecules, the atoms. And in that, since the whole planet, the whole universe, everything, or whatever you want to call it, is made up like this, then it's the ability to control it. And so since Satan didn't have that ability, then what he did is he incorporated man in an agreement, giving them power, like the Rothschilds, and to fund the monies to develop and to build it in a mechanical sense instead of the way God does it in a supernatural sense. Because I've mentioned before that we're all held together somehow. I've mentioned before, it's like a helicopter is a bunch of nuts and bolts flying in close formation. An electron or an atom, a proton, those things have spaces. There's the nucleus where it revolves around, and in that revolving is a space. So that means we're full of holes. So the table in front of me is full of holes. We can't see it because we don't have the ability to see down in that micro level or at the atomic level, like an electron microscope. I used to work on electron microscopes. I used to repair them. So I'm familiar with how that all works. But the question is, what separates it to where it's only wood? What separates it to that it's only metal? What separates it that it's only H2O water in its formation? And what keeps it together? That's what's amazing. You were talking about bringing the lobotomy stuff up again. It's been a while since I told the story. I know of an individual that was in a very peculiar relationship, and it was very stressful to them, and because of the depression that came out of it, they elected to take shock therapy. And in this shock therapy, they basically destroyed his mind. And he became very much like somebody who had a lobotomy, where that frontal lobe is destroyed and their processes, they just basically become a vegetable. And so he was then placed into a halfway house or some type of, management, that he was managed for his life. And in that, he met somebody that I knew. And this individual came out of Vietnam with post-traumatic stress and had a lot of the issues that had him in that same type of rehabilitation, and they became friends. And he, the person that I know, was very much into Scripture, very much into learning what the Bible was about. And so he would sit with this other individual that had the electroshock therapy, and he would read them the Bible. He didn't have anything else to do, so they would spend hours doing this. And then eventually, the other gentleman that had the electroshock therapy, he started reading the Bible. And then next thing you know, he's completely cured. He's now back into society, now as a manager of a corporate structure, and has hundreds of people below him. He went from basically being unable to even think, and through the Word of God came out to come back into society. And I've met this man, and he's a wonderful man. He's a good man. And he is so thankful to the Lord for restoring him through the Word of God that is one of the most incredible testimonies that I witnessed myself, that shows the power of God, that no matter what we see physically in front of us, no matter what the circumstances are, God is in control, and that through faith and belief and devotion and obedience, that His power will work, because that is one of the most amazing testimonies that I have ever heard. But getting back to flux lines and those things that the demonic has learned to use, because we have to assume that with the fallen angels, that they no longer have the angelic full capability that they had before. They're still evil. They still get away with things. But again, remember I mentioned earlier how they're bound into a law in the spirit realm that they have to stay within their dimension and their facilities. And so what they have done is they've tricked man into sinning, into agreement of going into the occult, to doing those things that are of divination and sorcery, which is an abomination before the Lord. And through the sin, the individuals that came into agreement with the fallen angels, though they gained power, though they gained knowledge, and they've gained wealth, and they've gained all of these things like the Rothschilds, the Bilderbergers, and all these other people. But the point of it is that their time's coming for the lake of fire. And the only way that evil could have done this is to manipulate and control man. So whatever the means are for what's taking place for UFOs and for transportation, we talked about being able to teleport troops and things like this. Whatever that is, the only way that it came about was because man was, and the ability to build things, built it. Because we see the 200 angels that landed on Mount Hermon in the book of Enoch, that they brought that technology to the people. That's where abortion came from, by the way. That was a technology that came from these fallen angels. We had metal workers, and along with the other technologies. And so in this exchange of technologies, evil was also exchanged, because that means that the individuals that went into agreement with the fallen angels are every bit as evil as they are. It's referred to as the depths of Satan. And again, if you're in agreement with them, then good luck with that. That's why we're doing the shows. We're trying to show that we cannot be in agreement with them. We cannot use we cannot use divination. We cannot do sorcery. We cannot do those things of witchcraft, because they are a means to use evil in the spirit realm to achieve what we want in the physical. And by doing so, we sell our souls. And so again, with the ability to transport through the lines, these flux lines, these things of ley lines, by the way, in the earth as well, it's the same thing. But apparently there's something else tied with that. Again, these are achieved through the agreement with the fallen angels. And wherever there are fallen angels are demons. And wherever you have demons, you have chaos. And when you have chaos, you have destruction. Nobody wins. This is a lose-lose. To be in agreement with evil is a lose-lose. So I hope that made sense to you, Julie. Go ahead.
Yeah. And you know, if these things had any good intentions, I mean, Nikola Tesla, by the way, he did record in his writings that he was getting this information from these beings that were beaming in and giving it to him. And he was talking about the spirit realm and all that. So if you don't believe in the spirit realm, well, Nikola Tesla did, because he talked about it in his writings, okay? And he willingly divulged that that's where he was getting these ideas, okay? So you can just say, you don't believe in it. Well, by golly, he did. And so did all of these other people that have written this in their biographies, Swedenborg, Copernicus. You just go back, you can name them off, and they all believe in these beings, and this is where they give credit for all the information that they had, was from these beings. So I leave that in your capable hands. I'm sure that you people can decipher that out for yourself and go look it up. But all throughout time, we have seen reference to this other world that exists. And your mind, who are they? Where did they come from? And are they lying to me? If whatever they're telling me, is it a lie? Because I would urge you to do so, because, you're worth that much. You're worth that much. You're worth a lot. All of you have a lot of worth. And they want to make you think you don't. And if you look at the way the world is structured, no one has any worth. They just walk in and kill whoever they want. In the Ukraine right now, they're beheading and killing people all over the place. It's a bloodbath over there. That's what's going on. Multiple beheadings every day, slaughtering, killing, beheading. You tell me that these beings have anything good in mind. We're trying to help humanity. No, well, ever since you've been here, everything's got worse, not better, So I would invite you, because you are worth it. You are, you're people, and Jesus Christ, the real Jesus Christ, not the one in the churches, he actually does care what happens to you. He really does. But remember, one thing I learned on the occult side before I came to this side, there are rules on both sides of the fence, okay? I could summon spirits. It's funny that there were things they couldn't do. They couldn't do it. So they were limited in their power, in their scope, okay? So I'm telling you that there's limitations on both sides, because you understand their laws of the universe were written from day one, okay? All of it was written from day one. So everybody plays by the rules. That's just how it works. And I would really hate to see anyone out there make decisions that would put their lives in grave jeopardy, the eternal life in grave jeopardy, because you believe these beings and you didn't maybe heed the warning of someone who was in the occult, who came out of the occult and is now warning you that this New Age idea, it sounds good, but it isn't true. I hate to say that, but it's the truth. It's not true. This whole New Age thing, all of the belief systems, it's not true. And I had to test it out for myself. I will leave that in your hands. You test it out for yourself. My email address is, by the way, on Scott's website, and anybody is welcome to, to contact me for an honest discussion. I don't want any Christian contact, trying to shove their doctrines down my throat. That I don't want. But New Agers, witches, occultists, atheists, whatever. I welcome any discussions as long as it's done like adults and it's lovingly done, because there's no need to argue. It is someone like me that came out of that world, and I'm trying to tell you now what I know about that world and how it is not really what it seems. And I just care about all of you and what happens to you. But, Scott, when we talk about this technology, it always came at a price. And if you read also in the ancient text, and I would specifically ask you to go back to the Babylonian text, if you guys can look that up on the Internet, there was always a price to be paid for this technology, and you're going to see there was always a lot of bloodshed, and it was always done at very high places. It was like the higher, the better. And I noticed that every time there was an incursion with these beings, there was a lot of killing and a lot of bloodshed. And, I can tell you that back then they called them gods, and they called them Anu and Osiris and Horus and Isis, and today they call them Mary and, Peter, and they have all these names they stuck on things at the Vatican. But I know that people can go back and do the research, and you go look for yourself and see where these things have interjected themselves and tried to plug into society and humanity. Every time they do, there's like massive bloodshed. And I'm sure you've seen that as well, Scott.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, I forgot to mention about Thomas Edison. He too was in the occult. But all of these individuals that are part of this are all Masons. Every one of them. Henry Ford as well. As far as Edison goes, on his deathbed, towards his death, he was working on a device which is now known as the Frank's box, that through electronic means you can use it to communicate to spirits. Of course, they thought they were talking to the dead, thought they were talking to Abraham Lincoln, all this stuff, when in reality it's demons. But we look at those people from the past that also were Masons, in Washington, Bonaparte, Marx, Stalin, and when you see pictures of them, they always have their hand in their coat of the typical Mason lion's paw formation that they do, the hand signs, and so when we see every corporation like the Fortune 500, they're all under the Illuminati. They're all in it together to control and to manipulate and to put the world in a particular form for its demise. Again, order out of chaos. So when I see the behaviors of the people in the past that may look like they were great scientists, because we know now that Ford himself was selling, had manufacturing facilities where they were making trucks for the Nazis. Now, I mentioned before, you could pull the two trucks up side by side and you could exchange carburetors and alternators and everything else, because they were basically the same thing. Well, how does that work? Well, it shows somebody playing both sides, which is exactly what takes place. You remember I mentioned that when a Jezebel comes in, they play both sides. And so this deception, this witchcraft, this mind control comes in many forms. And unfortunately, we've been in that for so long. I mentioned last night, many people think they can see deception coming as if it's coming from a distance. Like it's some rider in the desert, and you see this cloud of dust coming up, and you can see them from your camp. That's not how that works. Most people, well, all of us, are in it right now. It just depends on what level. And as soon as someone breaks free of it, as soon as someone starts to show that things are out of order and this is not right, then the way that they have established the laws now, especially with 9/11, with Homeland Security, that these individuals, and Julie, you remember hearing Bush himself, Bush Jr., about how they cannot tolerate having conspiracy theories. So all these cover-ups that are taking place, and by doing this is pointing the finger at the people of truth and making them the enemy. And only evil can do that. And when you take people who are innocent and you make them the bad guy, again, I'm just going to bring it up. Overpopulation. And so they're making the fact of producing children as a bad thing, and to justify the control numbers of people, then abortion is brought in, and then through abortion, then again not only just the demonic legal right, but then also we have a commodity or a product such as baby parts to be sold. So now we have a double evil, because this is just insane. But again, the only ones who can really do this are people who are evil. We can do things and make a mistake. We can do an action or say something that hurts someone, and then we get that guilt feeling. We get the Holy Spirit comes in and reminds us that we shouldn't do such things, and then we have remorse, and we have we want to go apologize. But anyone who's truly narcissistic, and again, Satan was the first documented narcissist, that the inability to love our fellow man correctly, to have compassion, to have the desire to be alongside them during circumstances, is what comes from God. But anything other that wants to try and steal, kill, and destroy obviously comes from the dark side. So why would we want to be with the dark side? Because, and Julie, I mentioned this the other day to you in one of our conversations, that if you see somebody acting, badly towards another person, and you're in a relationship with that person, otherwise, let's say you go to, through a checkout, and the person you've now entered into a relationship, everything's all rosy, brand new relationship, you're on that honeymoon kind of thing, right? Everyone's on their best behavior, but the person that you're with isn't looking at the clerk behind the counter that way. And so there may be something that didn't come up right, a price or something, and that person rips into the clerk. Well, I can guarantee you, as surely as the sun will rise tomorrow, that those 6 guns that your new partner has that fired on that clerk, eventually those guns are going to turn on you. So and I've mentioned before that when you meet somebody, pay very close attention to the first words that they say to you, because I really believe that God has put that in place, that the person in the first few moments or the first conversation will tell you who they are. And if you're not ready for the wisdom and the discernment to bring that into light as to who you're really dealing with, you may be dealing with somebody who truly is evil. And there's a lot of evil people out there. They're not going to return. They're not going to come back. They're gone. And it's terrible and it's frightening, but I'm afraid it's the truth. And many of these people that we see in office, they've sold their soul a long time ago. Anyone that's in a corporate structure got there by climbing up the backs of everyone else. You can't be a nice guy. I mean, there are, different people that do make it to a degree, but across the board, that's not the case at all. And so when you see anybody that's in office, immediately the red flag should go up. There's something wrong here, because they've made it this far, and you don't get this far unless you've been bought off, made agreements, or you sold your soul, or all the above. So, anyways. Well, Julie, we got about 40 minutes. What else you got? What do you want to go into?
Well, kind of back to the pineal gland. Whenever you go and you research throughout history and you find out what this gland is actually used for, once that gland is opened, and this is the lotus flower in Buddhism, the rose with Rosicrucians, and it's the flower blooming. That's a representative of that. And once it is open, you literally can begin to your DNA change. And as it recodes and as it changes, you are then open to the spirit world. And this is part of the problem, is that I've noticed that a lot of people, and I was guilty of it myself, what they will do is they will say, well, I don't, if I walked up to your house and I said, hey, I knock on the door, I come in and I help myself to your refrigerator and I get the food and prop myself up on the sofa and watch TV, you're going to say, who are you and what do you want? But whenever you're messing with these spirit beings, you don't actually do the same thing. You won't let me walk in your house or anybody else walk in your house and just, welcome them without, but you do with these beings. You let them in. And I did the same thing. So, once they are in and that tuning process is done with your pineal gland fully open, you become a chalice for these entities to latch on and to be able to just suck the life out of you. And they literally will change who you are and how you think. They're a lot more powerful than people give them credit for as far as the mind control. Now you add technology, those things of mind control that they have now, and you could see very easily how one would become, a society could become like a hive mind. Now, if you don't think there's anything to the hive mind, I would invite you to go and take a look at the inside of the Vatican. You can do this online because they have many pictures of this. I would invite you to also go back into history and look at the beehive and the representation of the bee. You're going to see a lot of bees in the occult and a lot of the honeycomb. You're going to see a lot of that in the occult. And there's a reason for that, because they want the hive mind where everybody thinks the same, everybody walks the same, talks the same. Why do you think they have been building houses in these tract sections? There's 3 kinds, and that's all there is, and everybody has to pick one. These are things that have been done, those and many other things. Why is it such a big deal that you have to have a pair of Echo Reds? Well, because that's the shoes everybody's wearing. Look at that, Echo Reds. I have to have Echo Reds. This is what they do. They, with their media campaigns, being like everybody else. To be different is not good. Now, with this regime in place in this nation, to be different is to be put on a terrorist watch list. Has anyone noticed that? Wiccan, New Ager, Buddhist, Hindu, anyone listening, have you noticed that if you're different and you don't speak like the rest of everyone and you stand against this regime for whatever reason, not taking my gun rights away, not taking whatever, you're now on a terrorist watch list. And why do we have veterans on a terrorist watch list? I'd like to know, because, my husband's a veteran of the Navy and spent the rest of his life involved in law enforcement as a deputy sheriff, and I can assure you if things go sideways, he'd be someone you'd want coming to your aid. But yet he's on a watch list because of his career, what he did. So I would ask you to check into why it is that people who have an opinion that differs from other people are on a watch list. They call Christians fundamental fanatics. Well, I have to tell you, from what I've seen, a lot of them aren't anything. They don't look any different than the world to me. They act just like everybody else, and I don't see them as any dangerous group. Now, Muslims, on the other hand, they're no problem. They're really nice, and they're kind, and we shouldn't put watch group. Never mind that they're beheading people all over the world and here in the United States, setting girls on fire in schools, grabbing girls in high school and trying to beat them up and cut their head off because they're wearing a tank top. But there is a religion of peace. It's peace. It's just peace. I have thousands of articles about this religion of peace, and I still have yet to see one Muslim stand up in this country and speak against their people committing these crimes. They don't say anything. The Muslims here all stand in solidarity. well, I know Muslims that don't believe in that. Yeah, and where are they? And why aren't they speaking out against what their fellow Muslims are doing if this is the religion of peace? So you see, they can put veterans and religious groups of any kind, but not the ones that go around slashing people's heads off. No, we don't want to do that because they're really pretty good people. Never mind that a mother just walked in on her 2-year-old being violently raped by her 59-year-old father. And I mean violently. This child was upon autopsy torn up inside, okay? And instead of killing her father or beating him off her child or something, she takes her 2-year-old daughter and goes and drowns her in the bathtub because she didn't want her family to be dishonored. Oh, yeah, it's a religion of peace, all right. That's right. We kill our kids if we think there's going to be a dishonor of the father. I'd dishonor that father real quick, right out the door with a shotgun. I mean, you know, the problem is that we've become a society where now people have to go and believe the same. And if you go back, go do it. Go research history. You know, people that don't learn from history are doomed to repeat it. And I don't think I'm the only one that's ever thought that. I do believe I remember that being said prior. You cannot ignore what's in front of your face. Go look at the bees, the beehives, the honeycombs. Go research what this means. You know, it may not mean anything to you, but I will tell you it means a hell of a lot to these people that are in the occult and running our country. It means a lot. It is everything to them. This is what they worship. This is their occult belief system, and they owe their loyalty and their allegiance to Lucifer, and they call him the Holy Serpent, the light bearer, and they love him. Well, you know, I personally don't like him and don't want anything to do with him. But you see, if I speak out, I go on a watch list because I'm not believing and thinking and walking and talking like the hive mind. So you take this pineal gland and you gain control of it, and that's the seat of the soul, my brother man, seat of the soul, all right? And that's how these cats roll. They want to take control of your mind. All you have to do is look at a commercial on television. Watch the commercial. Take Celebrex. You can do this again and this again and this again and this again. And while they have these people playing and having a good time, and it's wonderful, and you can die from this, and you can get that, and you can die of lung cancer, brain cancer, liver cancer, yeah, liver failure, jaundice. So look at all, and while they're saying all that, they've got these people joyfully on this medicine. Don't tell me there's not brainwashing going on everywhere, including in the school system. You, as a New Ager or anything that you are, want to be part of a hive mind where you're not allowed to be an individual and think for yourself, then you will love the New World Order. You will really like it because you will be told what to do 24 hours a day because they will take over your pineal gland, and when they do, there is no coming back. Once that technology is implemented, and by the way, folks, I don't know if you know this, but they actually have, and I have seen them, they're mosquito drones. And they have the capability of injecting poison into you, flying in your home like a mosquito would, and murdering anyone that's on a hit list. Doesn't that make you sleep better at night, knowing that the government's made these mosquitoes, these drones that can go in and literally kill you because they don't like you? Is that what you want, friends? That you want your government to have so much control that you can't even be who you are anymore? Is that what you want? Because, friends, that's where it's going. That's where everything's headed. And it's already there. Do you know people worry about me? I have listeners that worry about me because I speak against child trafficking. I name off people who are involved, and by the way, every senator in the Senate, but 2 of them, are child rapists and traffickers. I'm telling you, that's the way they roll. This is how these cats get down, man. You need to start becoming aware and looking around, because I'm telling you, you're either going to believe like them and think like them and walk like them and talk like them, or you're going to die. That's the choice that you have. because they are not going to tolerate dissenters for any reason. So I would urge you to do your homework about seeds and honeycombs and pineal glands, because that part of the brain is so powerful. The intelligent designer that designed that part of the brain is a magnificent. I can't even begin to tell you whenever I learned about these parts of the brain and what they do. It is absolutely phenomenal, and you cannot ever look at something like that and not know that there is an intelligent creator behind it. But there's also an intelligent being that's very evil that wants to use that same gift that you were given by the creator to his advantage, and he wants to pervert it and pollute it for his own benefit. So I would actually ask you to go look into these things. And Scott, I don't know if you heard about the mosquitoes, but I actually got a chance to see one. Oh boy, pretty scary.
Yeah, and in fact, the movie The Eye in the Sky has that technology in it. It's actually quite an interesting movie. I wanted to bring up, and Julie, I know you know about Charlie. I see some refer to it as a Mexican demon, but whatever. The point is, what I'm going to do here is these different games: Charlie, Light as a Feather, a Ouija board, 8-Ball, Bloody Mary, and other blood oaths and games, that when I come across this with the people that I'm doing deliverance on, they're very heavily infected with those types of demons that cause confusion, that cause anxieties, that cause fear, nightmares, even physical visitations where they're physically assaulted. Now, if that happens with these particular games, then those that are working with CERN, which are basically doing the same thing of connecting in, only to a much greater degree, how would the people that are running this equipment, the ones who've designed it, the ones that are there maintaining it, how can they get away with not having demons? They must see an incredible amount of supernatural stuff. In fact, Julie, I'm sure that they actually have ceremonies. I'm sure that they have rituals. In fact, some of the stuff that I've seen, that they had many rituals that brought in the first turning on of CERN. And then you sent me that video of the occult practice that was being done with Baphomet on that tunnel. If anyone hasn't seen that, it's pretty hideous. Because when you see when you know what's going on, and then you see people doing this, it's pretty frightening. And these people are in agreement. They've sold themselves. Most of them are never going to come out of it. Most of them are going to perish. Most of them are going to experience the second death, the lake of fire. And how terrible that is. You know, Europe in itself was taken over a very, very long time ago. Those things of Catholicism, which, by the way, is another cult, which is another avenue of the Zionist, another avenue of those things that go back to the Babylonian system, that by bringing that in, and the rituals and the ceremonies and the sacrifices that took place in those churches, whether it was actually in the cathedral itself or down below, tainted those areas with blood. And so it took a while for God to remove his hand off of those areas, but now that has taken place. But we do see, like in China and other places, where there's this incredible revival. I mean, think about this. We have right now, remember, if you were listening last night, I mentioned how this is the good times, because I can go read my Bible. I can get on the internet and I can research and I can find things. But there's going to be a day that's not going to happen. So regardless of the situation we're in right now, this is the good times. Because when we look at the underground Chinese church, they'll take a Bible and they'll rip every page out of the Bible carefully, and they'll give it to everybody within the congregation or within the group of people. So if 1, 2, 5, or 6 are caught, they still have the other pages of the Bible. And when they come together in their underground churches, they all bring that scripture. And they take turns reading that scripture. So they're actually going through the Bible, page at a time, through the individuals that come to bring those pages. That's how valuable it is to them. That's the worth of the Word of God to those people who are in tyranny. Because the Chinese people, as we had Mitch on a couple weeks ago, revealing to us those things of live organ harvesting and the abduction and the encampment of certain people and killing them off by the millions, is a representation of what's coming here. You know, I also mentioned last night, or the theme of the show last night was the eye of the storm. See, the United States is in the eye. Around us, the storm is going on in other countries, and all the chaos is happening. And so there's a little bit of debris flying, the wind is blowing, but, you know, as soon as the storm moves through, then we're going to be in that storm. And we're going to be in every bit of the same circumstances that's happening over in Europe, down in South America, down in you know, over in China. This is one of the reasons that we're electing to go to shortwave, because I've now spent 16 years trying to bring this message, trying to deliver demons, to eradicate them out of Christians, and the opposition has been absolutely tremendous. And when we read that it's actually the Word of God to do so, that we've been commanded to do it, why in the world do I want to continue with those who reject it? There are the lost out there. There are those that are on the fence. There are those who are lukewarm, those who we're going to reach. Because we're told that if we're not received, we shake the dust off of our feet and we move on. And so that's what Julie and I have done. That's why we're doing this show. And so we're trying to, again, reach into a different audience in hopes that before it's too late. You know, I mentioned before that one of the lies that's taught to us is that we have time. I thought we had time. One of the reasons I didn't become a Christian, and I certainly had, you know, the ensnarement of being tricked into having all of a sudden 10 Baptist people basically beating me over the head with Bibles, and it was a horrible situation, actually caused me to flee, that I said to myself, but I have time. I know who this Jesus is, though I didn't really know, but I knew of him. And the thing of it is I didn't. I thought I had time. And it was the grace of God that time was brought to my room, to my apartment, and made that choice when I opened up the spirit realm, just like you do when you're playing Charlie Charlie and Light as a Feather and a Ouija board and 8-Ball and Bloody Mary and all of these others. I was basically doing the same thing, and next thing I know, I'm in outer darkness, and I've talked about that before. In fact, it's in my books. So we just we just have to again realize that there really is evil. Because when I finally came to that understanding that there really was evil and it wanted to destroy me, is when I came to that understanding of what side I had to choose. And so I made the right choice. And because of that, then my salvation, my relationship with God, and my eternity to be secured in this was done. And so that's what we extend to everyone else. So anyways, Julie, if you can do maybe about 10, 15 minutes, and then I'll close it out. Go ahead.
All right. Well, one who does not believe in Jesus, I do not believe in Jesus in the way that we are presenting how we feel. Bear in mind, these are our feelings and our beliefs. We're not telling you that that's what you have to do. We're just asking if you would just open your mind and you would just kind of check it out, some of the things I'm telling you. because I have been in the occult, and I was a part of that dark world, and I can tell you that everything that I did in that world was actually not good. I did not see it that way at the time, but come from that world, I kind of have a different viewpoint, and what I know to be true is actually pretty serious. It's actually very serious. And I will say this, shocking to me, what I have seen is witches' covens that are not, they're not evil. I've seen witches that are not evil. They're not evil. There's Wiccans that aren't evil. They don't go around trying to be evil or cast spells on people or whatever. And you might think that's kind of funny and it doesn't work, but it actually does work, by the way. But one of the things that I noticed that really shocked me was that within these religious organizations, I literally thought there were covens of witches in these Christian churches because that's what it looked like. It was familiar to me. And I was like, oh, we have those on the dark side, covens of witches. And practicing the same word cursing, everything was the same. So I just assumed they're covens that are just infiltrated these religious institutions. And I come to find out that this is something that happens all the time. And no, these people are not actual witches, but they practice witchcraft in the same way that witches do outside of these religious institutions. And they go after people with the intent to kill, maim, destroy, but yet they have this facade of saying they believe in this Jesus guy, right? So I'm sure many of you have met those people, and that may be one of the reasons why you don't like so-called Christianity. Well, I'm with you, friends. I can't stand anything to do with Christianity. It's a cult, just like all the rest of these cults, and they don't know Jesus. They don't even know who he is. I mean, there are some within those churches that do belong to the real Jesus, but they've just been brought up in those places, and they just don't know any better. But most people, I've just seen a lot of witchcraft, people operating witchcraft in these institutions. So I just thought they were just witches that had infiltrated, but it seems that sadly they're not. They just are operating in those spirits. So it kind of goes to show you that across the board, anyone can be used by these spirits. And believe me, you may think that they're coming and giving you advice and telling you good and nice and wonderful things. You may believe that, but please take heed to my words. Take heed to my warning. I walked on the dark side. I walked it. I lived it. And I would tell you, please, fool you. Don't. And if, test the spirits. Tell them, in the name of Jesus, you tell me the truth. And you know what? When you are seeking truth, it doesn't matter if you believe in Jesus or not. Trust me, it'll work. Because I didn't know who he was, and I was just asking simply, was he real? And the Spirit of God showed up in my house. So, and I definitely knew who that was as opposed to who I'd been speaking to. There was a huge difference, okay? So just, test things. Test all things. Go and look into what I'm telling you from someone who's a former practitioner of the occult I just want you to know that I know where you're at, and I totally understand your feelings because I had those same feelings, but I really would like you to look into this stuff. And, Scott, when, if someone that's an alcoholic and they don't drink anymore, I think a fellow alcoholic is really the only one that can help someone else quit drinking because, when you come from a certain way of life, it really does help the people who are in that life It helps them to be able to see more clearly and understand, and you know that person was in the same shoes you're in and believe the same thing. So I think, if you are involved in the dark arts or you're involved in witchcraft, Wicca, any of that, I'm not your judge, okay? I don't judge you, and I'm not saying anything. I'm not going to tell you that you're a bad person, because you know what? Even though I was involved in that side of things, I did not have evil intentions toward anyone. I just never had that in my heart. So there are people out there who practice these things that don't have evil intentions. But you see, it's not your intentions that I'm talking about. It's the intentions of the beings that tell you they're one thing, but they're really not. They're something else. So that would be my instruction, is that I would ask you to please test all things. And like I said, my website information, I do gemstone necklaces and jewelry, hand beading. I'm Native American, and I do Native American beadwork. You can always go to my website, check it out, sogarstones.com. You can get my contact information there and off Scott's website, and I'd be more than happy to just tell you anything you want to know. I'm very open about my past and where I came from. And if you just want to ask questions, there's no judgment at all coming from me, because who am I to judge you when I used to walk in your shoes, and I was there. So I will be a willing listener, and any questions you have, I'd be more than happy to answer them.
I want to bring up that 1 Corinthians 1:27, the foolish things of this world, and God will confound those who consider themselves wise. But in Proverbs 16:18, pride cometh before the fall. Matthew 18:3, we must become as little children. And then we look in James 4:10 and Peter 5:6 to humble ourselves before the Lord. See, one of the things that I have found that in the so-called Christian church is pride. And in that pride, a person has actually made themselves ignorant. Because what you've done is you've placed yourself above your fellow man. We talked about narcissism. We talked about those things that take away, that are absent of the love for our fellow man. Now, when I was dealing with some things down in Arizona, a psychologist that I had met, that he and his colleagues actually had a financial constant income because of what they referred to as the wolf pack within the Christian churches in the Mesa, Chandler, Gilbert area in Arizona. The wolf pack. These were people that basically, when somebody would come in that was hurt and wounded or searching, and these religious Jezebels, which included the men, because in order for a Jezebel to succeed, they have to have an Ahab. The two spirits have to work in formation. In fact, what I mentioned about how Jezebel can come into a corporation, what they do when they divide and they segregate is they turn the others into Ahabs, meaning that the people that normally would have been upstanding and righteous and wanting to do what's right in the order of things, then do not, because they've been lowered. So what we have is, just like Julie was saying, that there's the appearance of having witch covens within churches, and that may be the case. But in reality, what I'm seeing is a structure of individuals that have placed themselves above, that say they believe in the Word and are not following it, and they are acting independently of God to bring in righteousness in their own determinant, okay, their own definition and their own ways. And so what's happened is you have these people who were searching for truth. People were searching for, they're going through divorce or they're coming out of drug issues or whatever, and then they get mixed up with these people. And next thing you know, they're abandoned, they're thrown under the bus, they're lied to, they're stabbed, they're abused. There's a terrible amount of abuse that goes on within churches that's done under the name of legalism, that's supposedly done under the name of religion. And so this group of psychologists, counselors, they actually have a substantial income because of the people that they're assisting. You know, the insurance will take care of, you know, so many visits, right, to a psychologist or counselor. And so they're actually able to have an income based on the wolf pack in the churches. That these individuals cause so much harm, so much devastation, so much destruction, that those in the secular world that have to do with psychology actually benefit from it. Now, that's a sad state of affairs. I personally know this. I personally have to deal with this. I can't tell you how many people have come through my door that have been a victim. Most people that have a tremendous amount of demonic influence, manifestations, being terrorized with nightmares and night terrors, even incubus and succubus spirits coming to them and raping and molesting them, they've already been to the churches. They've already done what they can to get help from them, and they didn't. Now, I thought we were to represent God. I thought that we had Christ that lives in us. I thought that we were able to move forward in all power and all authority. Well, if that's the case, then what's wrong here? Remember, I mentioned about a troubleshooter, being in electronics and engineering and radio, that a troubleshooter has to, in his diagnostics, just like any doctor, there has to be prognosis. You know, you've got to determine what's wrong here. So when I address this situation and I look at the facts and I weigh them out, then what I see is that those who call themselves Christians are not. They're not really following the Word of God. They're not doing the Great Commission. They're not doing those things they've been called to do. They're living in a self-righteous destruction because death will come upon them. Those things of accountability, that judgment comes and first starts in the house of God, period. And the time is short. And so even those people who were searching, just like I was at one time and thought I had time, these individuals who have embraced men's doctrines, which are demonically influenced, so therefore they're a doctrine of demons, have bought into the lie and are playing what's called church. Has nothing to do with Christ. Because if the gates of hell will not prevail against Christ's church, then why are we in the state that we are in? Again, assessing and looking at the probability, laying the facts out, and weighing the evidence, and coming to what's your conclusion? Well, that is that the Word of God is not being done, at least not in order. And since God's a God of order, then therefore it didn't come from Him. And through any other means, because it's only Christ plus nothing, and through any other means, then therefore you will fail. It may look good, it may taste good, it may smell good, it may give benefits for a time, but that is exactly the behavior of demons, to ensnare a pagis, the Greek word pagis, to snare and entrap in someone into a lie, to go down a road that brings destruction. You know, you can imagine being ambushed. Could you imagine, I was reading some up on the Korean War. You know, we forget, we hear about World War I and World War II and then all the others, but for some reason the Korean War is kind of shoved off to the corner here. You know, even the guys in Vietnam, like for instance, the ones they called rats, tunnel rats. The smaller men in the platoon in Vietnam usually were the ones picked to go down in those holes, those caves of the Viet Cong. And do you know what? Many of those men are, the post-traumatic stress for them, that many of them aren't alive anymore because they took their lives a long time ago. Because when they went down in there, death was waiting for them, and they knew that. And between the snakes and the glass and the knives and, the type of ambush, that they were waiting for the other shoe to drop. at any moment, over and over and over again. That is the basis of post-traumatic stress. Again, we called it soldier's heart in the Civil War. We called it shell-shocked, or those things of battle fatigue in World War I, and shell-shocked in World War II, and then eventually, along with Korean, and then eventually came out and called it post-traumatic stress. And in post-traumatic stress is the devil's playground. And the devil doesn't play fair. And so many of the people who are in the church are actually broken. And they were brought into a false sense of comfort and reality without being delivered. Otherwise, there was, sweet things that were brought to them that gave them physical pleasure, or gave them a sense of euphoria. Again, some of the electronic means that are being done in the churches under Phycotronics, and even some of the churches, like Julie was talking about, in their structure, that in itself became resonant to the Schumann resonant, and giving the false sense that the Holy Spirit was there when it wasn't. And so they were embracing the teachings and the doctrines of demons. And this has evolved into what we have today. Because if, just like Julie, you said that if you read the Bible, as you did, and then you go to church, you find out they're not teaching the same thing. Well, how is that if we say we are Christians, if we say we are bondservants of Christ? Well, obviously there's something wrong. And when you have a mechanical electrical device that is operating incorrectly, let's say that you have an engine and you've poured sand into it, it may function for a while, but eventually it's going to burn up. And in these last days, I can assure you right now, the church is burning up. We're heading for hell. We're heading for the end. All right, Julie, we're out of time. Thanks. We'll see you on Monday. God bless.